largest companies that makes insect protein for food in Canada. And I formed this team with Darren and others, and we now have launched an insect farming program in Madagascar. Now, insects are actually ideal. One, historically, Madagascar used insects. Two, it just is right for the environment. Anybody can start growing crickets or silkworms on a small scale. It's good for the environment. As we know, insects have a small footprint. That's a joke in English, but it doesn't work today. And more importantly, the nutrients are available to especially children to fight malnutrition. They have shown that you can get more protein from insects than you can from a steak. And as I said, historically it was very important. The last queen of Madagascar, who was in the capital, she had 2 specialized cooks that just cooked the queen's royal family insects. So quite recently, they cherished insects. And the 2 most important ones were the silkworm and the locust. And we're going to use crickets. And this is interesting, this concept of the locust. In the southwest of Madagascar, where they're having a famine right now, the BBC goes and films it, the locust outbreaks, and claims, oh my gosh, what a plague. We need to kill all these insects. Well, actually, the locals would get more protein from eating the insects than they would from the crops that they're growing. So even the Western idea of locusts is wrong, that we should be thinking that as an incredible vibrance of life for eating. So in Madagascar, we're doing 2 projects now, one on the silkworm, which is interesting because it's used also to produce silk for their funerals. So they have a tradition of growing the silkworm to make silk for their weaving, for their funerals, but also they eat the pupa. But they do it in a very simplified way that hasn't been really scaled up for commercialization. They still do it outside, where there's lots of parasitoids, where they lose half for birds, they lose the silkworms. So we're going to start doing it inside, using the technology of creating paste from the host plant leaves. We're going to farm the leaves by growing trees and reforestation. So there's good for the forest. And this is just a picture from right next to our center of the silkworm larva, right there being sold, and I didn't even realize it, under my nose, that they're still selling it right in the capital. So even in the capital, you can actually buy this. But we want to actually make a protein powder and use it as a supplement for the rice in their porridge, especially for fighting malnutrition in the kids. So here's the picture of the new team. It includes your colleague from SKYPE, who's there.
In the middle.
Right there. And he's actually one of our great leaders in training for how to rear the crickets. And we are doing trials. We want to make sure we're using native insects. So now we're testing different trials of what native insects to use and to actually test them and whether or not they can be perceived, or some of these traditions are very localized, but we want to know how widespread they could be across Madagascar. So in the end, we want to only choose about 2 or 3 insects that we want to mass scale up. And soon we're going to hopefully go, if the funding comes through in August, we'll be able to move into factory level production of these insects. And once again, for the silkworm, it requires a host tree. That means planting the host tree. And this is the group we want to work with to actually do the reforestation of the host trees for the silkworm. Now, you may think, this is just for Madagascar. I never considered eating insects. We have lots of food here in Kiev, right? But actually, you know, it's a world problem. It's going to come to us here in our Western worlds before we know it. And some people think that maybe there's just plan B, right? We're going to go to Mars. But I can guarantee you, if we do go to Mars, one, we know that they're going to grow potatoes there. You saw that movie, Mars. But they're also, I bet, in terms of insects, in terms of protein, they'll be growing insects. So there's no reason to think about waiting to go to Mars. You might as well start eating insects here. It's a choice we could make here. But in a place like Madagascar, there's no choice. They're going to have to figure out how to be more sustainable or else very soon, they're going to lose all their forest. And I don't know how that society will continue. So for Madagascar, the insects are calling now. But you have some time, but do consider it. And just want to thank you again for being such a wonderful host. And we've greatly enjoyed speaking with all of you. And if you have any interest in learning more about any of this, you can find us on the 4th floor. So thank you.